Hello, Steeler fans. It's Bowser Sports, and today we're going to focus on the Steelers draft, their draft needs, some potential players they could get in the early to the mid to later rounds, and we'll see how it plays out. Join me as we take a look at the Steelers draft and not have to talk about Aaron Rodgers. So first off, let's take a look at the depth chart that the Steelers have. On the offensive side, right now it's Mason Rudolph at quarterback. We've got Jaylen Warren at running back. Pat Fryermuth, DK Metcalf, George Pickens, Roman Wilson, Broderick Jones, Alex Sayamo, Zach Frazier, Mason McCormick, and Troy Fautano. On paper, not too bad if players live up to potential. There are some needs at quarterback, running back. I think tight end, second spot, I think is up for grabs. I don't think Darnell Washington provides you much of a pass receiving option. I think he's going to become your third tight end or blocking tight end. He just doesn't have the mobility, agility to get out in space in a quick enough manner. So I think the tight end position is going to be one. It's going to be a sneaky need, depending on how the draft plays out and who's there when they pick. And from the first line on, like there's the potential of getting a pretty strong tight end class as well. So on the defensive side, you've got Hayward and Benton, I think, on DN. This team rarely plays with all three down linemen. Usually, first and second down, depending on moment of the game, game situation here. So, I didn't list out a nose tackle, but I think the team does have a need for a quality nose tackle to help them stop the run on those first and second downs, as Tomlin would say, the weighty downs. So you could see someone there. That's why I think the team, and you've heard about a guy like Kenneth Grant. I think is more of your traditional nose tackle type than a Steelers 3-4 defensive tackle on the end. So I think they're set at outside linebacker, inside linebacker, safety, and cornerback. Pretty well set there. So I really think from you look at this depth chart, like there's no major need. I think they could go in the season with Mason Rudolph and really probably end result not really be much different if they had who at quarterback. Ultimately, they won't have even with Rodgers, they won't have. I don't think an elite team on the offensive side. I also think George Pickens is a very strong candidate to be traded, and I think that could then eventually influence how this draft plays out. And so, with further ado, let's kind of take a look quickly here at their draft needs. So wide receiver, I think, is going to become their top need. I don't think George Pickens will return unless there's some kind of miracle with his attitude on and off the field. I think you're fine with DK Metcalf as you want, and then your slot receivers with Roman Wilson and Kelvin Austin. I think you're good there for 1, 3, and 4 spots, but you do need a good number two to replace Pickens, especially if they do decide to trade him, up until the draft time here. So you do need to eventually need to find a third DN, someone to eventually replace Hayward. They do need depth. They need someone to play that nose tackle position, I think, better than they've been getting. I think Keanu Benton was misplaced and played too much, traditional nose tackle in those first and second downs. I need to get him into the Stephon Tuitt role, get him over in that side, alongside T.J. Watt, and let's see what happens with Benton, Keanu Benton's pass rushing, because I think he has those skills to pass rush. At running back, I've said before, if you've listened to any of my shows when we've talked about the Steelers, I do think Warren is much better suited as a number 2, 1B type of running back, spot starter, but I don't think he's your bell cow. I don't think he's your number 1 guy. I just think with his size, I just don't think he's is the right fit. I think Gainwell is an ideal number 3. He can come in as your third down back. He can come in as a spot series guy or your number 2 guy. So I think that's good depth there. So running back long term, mentioned before, I think it would be lunacy to draft a running back in the first round unless somehow, some way, Ashton Genty slips all the way to 21, which even that I wouldn't see that as good value for the team because they'd have much bigger problems. I believe, with some of the more skilled positions at wide receiver and defensive line and cornerback. And it mentioned a cornerback, right? They've got Joey Porter Jr. They've got Darius Slay coming over from the Eagles. He's a bit older, so and they'll have Trice over there as a younger cornerback, but with his injury history, I think there's a little bit of trepidation there of going into the season without trying to get another corner. This depth chart from a draft perspective, you'll see there's really not a lot of great depth there. So I think the Steelers are going to have to strike early at cornerback if the draft falls right for them, or they're probably going to have to stay with with Trice and hope they don't have injuries in the top two. As well, I think Beanie Bishop, as a slot corner, there's a really good chance that there are some guys in this draft who could probably be your slot corner. So we'll see how that plays out here when we get to in a minute when I'll show on the first mock draft. From a quarterback perspective, I don't think there's too much to say. Everyone knows this draft is not strong. Cam Ward's probably the best option. I'm really not sure about Shedeur Sanders. He'll probably go early. I think he'll be overdrafted. I think Cam Ward is going to be overdrafted, being both probably the number 1 and 4 picks of the draft. But there could be value when you get later on into the second, third, fourth rounds, depending again how the draft plays out. Is there a guy there who can be available? From a tight end perspective, we've already mentioned about Freiermuth, and I think they really do need a number 2 pass catching receiver who's good in line too. So we'll see how that goes. From the depth chart on the guard position, you've got Seumalo and McCormick. I think they do need to find someone who's going to become the long-term answer. Again, will that be this draft? Will that be next offseason, either free agency or draft or trade? And then on the tackle position, I do think they need to find someone to compete with Broderick Jones and Troy Falatano. Injuries, bad play. You're talking about Falatano coming off an injury. It really will be his true rookie season after one game. And Jones has struggled in his second year over on the right side. He's going to move over to the left. The hope is hopefully he's highly motivated to play that left side. And then you're just really looking for your swing tackle then, who's probably a little bit better than Spencer Anderson, who might then become your probably better guy who fits over here in your guard play. All right, next up we've got your targets, and you're kind of gonna see some guys highlighted, gonna give away kind of players who are gonna be drafted. As you can see here from an early draft perspective, I think there's some good depth in these players that I've targeted at the wide receiver position with Tetero, McMillan, Matthew Golden, who's come into town to visit the Steelers, Emeka Ebukwe, and Jaden Higgins. I think on out of those wide receivers, if McMillan falls to 21, I would be shocked if he's not the pick with his size and skill and talent. You draft the wide receiver number 1 there. That will give you some flexibility. You decide, oh great, we got the wide receiver we need to can slot in day 1 to replace Pickens, then immediately allow you to hopefully move Pickens for a second round, high second round pick to then try to get some of that quality back that you lost with the trade of the second round pick to Seattle for DK Metcalf. On the D line, Derek Harmon is my top guy on the D line at this portion of the likely from the first or second round. He's probably going to go anywhere potentially as high in the 15-16 range. Hopefully he slips to the Steelers. I think he's the ideal replacement long term for Hayward on the D line. I think he has got the size, and I think he's the length and everything that would be ideal for that role. Kenneth Grant here, I think, is going to become more of your nose tackle type. Walter Nolan, I'm not really sure he fits scheme wise into Leek Williams. Similar, I'm not sure, where he'll fit in. But those are probably the more talented players at this early portion of the draft. From a running back perspective, I didn't list Ashton Jeanty. I don't think he'll be anywhere near 21 when he goes, because you got the Bears, you got the Raiders, you've got the Cowboys. I think those teams are all looking for running backs, and most likely will take Jeanty. One of those 3 will take him. Omarion Hampton, I think he's probably the second best. Caleb Johnson, I think, is the more ideal running back for this team. Cam Skattebo, who I think is going to be more of a short yardage power back. I think he may surprise people. But I think there's a lot of miles on his legs, and I'd be really curious to see how that plays out as he gets into the NFL. From cornerback perspective, the first guy here, Jahdae Barron, I think he's another. Again, he sits there at 21, and depending on how this draft plays out, these guys I've got listed as kind of like the ideal guys in the first round. Besides running back listed here, I think Barron's a guy to look at if he doesn't get drafted beforehand. I think the Steelers have a need. He could immediately come in, probably push Beanie Bishop out of a job, at least a starter position job, and Barron could play right away. From I think if you're looking for a shot in the dark, somehow the Steelers get into the second round, early second round. Siobhan Ravel, I think, is a guy who's got length. He's got the skills. Unfortunately, he's coming off a knee injury, and so that's why I think he's kind of stayed in that middle place and hasn't kind of leaped out. Even though he's got talent, I would not be shocked to see a guy like this get drafted by the Baltimore Ravens. I just think with his talent, they may see that and take a chance. Another guy who's coming to town, Azareya Thomas from the Florida State Seminoles. He's been mocked a lot and discussed in the late first, early to mid second round as a talent. He's in one of those. He's like 20 years old, young cornerback. It's a really good opportunity to get a player young and still being a development in his early years. The quarterback, man, it is tough. Jackson Dart, I think, is a good talent. I think Will Howard is a good talent. I'm very suspect about Jalen Milroe as a quarterback. And Quinn Ewers, I'm really not sure. I saw quite a number of games, and I thought that the games that Archie Manning played and when he got in, he looked better than Quinn Ewers. So I'd be really hesitant to be happy if the Steelers draft him. From this draft, the best arm talent is Tyler Shough from Louisville, but he's much older, and so I don't think that makes a lot of sense early in a draft to draft him unless you're talking like fourth round. At tight end, the best guy is Tyler Warren, Penn State. If he falls to the Steelers at 21, he's going to be the pick. I mean, to have two tight ends of Freiermuth and him lined up with any quarterback's dream to have that type of talent in line and split out to create matchup problems for defenses. Colston Loveland, I think he's your tweener. I think he's a good tight end. Mason Taylor, similar players. These guys, more pass catching, but all can block well. At the guard, I don't think any of these guys for the Steelers are going to be an option. But these are kind of the top guys in this first and second round picks from an interior offensive line perspective. And then on the outside, again, I don't think the team is going to be looking in on the outside with Broderick Jones and Troy Fautanu. So that's kind of where we're looking at from a early part of the draft here. So comment below with what are you thinking about these guys who are probably in somewhat of a range for the Steelers at 21, or maybe getting back into the second round. Which ones of these interest you? Now, from a mid to late round pick, I think the guy that I'm going to call is Dante Thornton, 6'5" Tennessee wide receiver. Salvion Williams from TCU, another bigger, thinner wide receiver. I think Thornton is going to be the more ideal guy when we're talking about mid round receiver. On the D line, if the Steelers decide not to go, and we're looking at third, fourth, fifth round, you've got a guy like C.J. West from Indiana. I think he's kind of underrated with his size and can probably better fit the nose tackle type position, but I could also see him move into the ends. I think Vernon Broughton from Texas is more of a, and even J.J. Peggs. Those guys are probably going to be more of your nose tackle probably positions, and Howard Cross is probably your tweener in that way. I think as you can see next here, the running back depth is insane. With here we're looking at the mid-round guys, and there's even way more guys I could have listed here, but DJ Giddens, Damon Martinez, Bashal Tootin, and Devin Neal. I think Devin Neal is the guy who fits the Art Smith style of offense a lot better. The ideal guy would probably be Caleb Johnson from Iowa, but I think unless the Steelers get into early second round. I think he's going to be gone. A cornerback, again, I don't think it's a strong cornerback. Jordan Hancock, I think, is probably your most ideal guy if you're looking to the mid to late round and looking for probably more likely an inside corner, someone who can play and compete with Beanie Bishop for that slot corner. I think he's probably the guy who can probably move inside for you. Quarterback, again, there is not much here. You're talking about mid to late in the draft. I think Kyle McCord, who moved from Ohio State to Syracuse, I really wasn't impressed with his time last year with Syracuse. And Max Brosmer, again, a big quarterback. Not really sure. These guys are both projects. A tight end, again, it's a deep draft. I think these guys are more of your second, third string type of tight ends. But if the team is looking for a guy to kind of get in there and compete with Darnell Washington and Hayward and folks, we'll see if the team decides. But this has probably becomes tight end positions where the team will probably address with someone like Pitts, Gavin Bartholomew, who actually had a local visit with the team. Interior, again, not too much here. I think Cooper Mays is a guy to kind of look at late to undrafted as well. And then from an offensive tackle perspective, Chase Lunt is in that 150 range. Brandon Crenshaw, Dixon, and Jack Nelson are all kind of in your 200s range from an overall ranking. And I think Nelson coming out of Wisconsin with a tradition, and I've seen from their offensive line history, I think Nelson's the guy that I would look at, both as a tackle, swing tackle, as well as potential to slide inside next year with Sayamalo likely being his last year, if I had to guess. And I believe Crenshaw Dixon was actually already had met with the team previously. And so from a mock draft perspective, you notice with the highlighting, you're probably going to see I've gone with Derek Harmon. I think with the way the draft will play out, I think he's going to become your ideal D-line guy. In the third round, Will Howard, quarterback. The team does need to get some potential in there behind, Rodgers or Rudolph. And so they need to get someone younger in there for just in case with Howard out of Ohio State. Dante Thornton in the fourth round, wide receiver, Tennessee. I think with his size, it allows you to have that 1 year with Pickens if in this scenario they don't trade Pickens. And then you've got in the fifth round, which, maybe fifth round he lasts, but I'm hoping to see Devin Neal from Kansas. I think he's the second best running back that fits this type of offense here. So in the sixth round, going with Hancock, cornerback. I think he's going to be a good guy to slot in there at corner. Be the backup for probably Porter and Slay and Trice, and then also slide inside and work with Beanie Bishop, who will be a much better probably combination than we saw with Cam Sutton last year with the Steelers. So I don't know if that's been written off yet with Sutton kind of getting pushed out here. So and then just wrap up with Jack Nelson. I think a guy who I think has potential on the tackles, but I don't think the Steelers really have a need there. And so you would hope to draft him, get him experience at both left guard and left tackle, or even right tackle, and see how he does and let him compete. And Faletano was a first round pick, but he had a knee injury, he had a history of injuries, so. Steelers need to be mindful of that, and so I think it would be wise to get a tackle and maybe a guy who potentially could slide in here. So that's it. Hope you enjoyed today's episode. We'll continue to look at the draft. Hopefully soon we'll figure out what is going to happen at the quarterback position. Do the Steelers, from a free agent perspective, decide to bring anyone else in? Probably not, other than maybe the quarterback position, get to the draft, and then from there they'll probably fill out things, but make some comments in the section, right? Love to see some dialogue there. If you enjoyed today's episode, please give us a like and please subscribe. It's free to do. And that's it for today. So hope you enjoyed today's episode. Thank you and have a good one.